we're going to take a retrospective look at what's happened in Libya and the minute-by-minute developments, and of course what the future portends for Libya. Dr. Eke Agbai is the Vice President of the Center for Policy and Foreign Engagement. He's a friend of the House. Another friend of the House, Chika Wozuzu, is Faculty Advisor, Nigeria Model United Nations Society. I mean, by this time yesterday, with the tough talk of the rebels and what the international media was saying, one would have thought that Gaddafi was about to fall like a pack of cards, but that apparently hasn't happened.
No, it has not. In fact, I made it absolutely clear it would be the height of naivete for any person to expect that Gaddafi regime was collapsed, albeit it's just a matter of time. But I think caution must be taken into what is currently unfolding. Was it a ploy to get the rebels into it? No. The fact of the matter is, he has been boxed to a corner. He will give it his last shot. But this is the time that the Transitional Council must make sure that not only are they being very strategic, but they look at saboteurs within the regime. The mere fact that the son, first Mohammed, escaped, the second now coming out, tells you right there that something did not go well. Yes, it's going to be very fluid. You must expect that Gaddafi, having got to the 11th hour, like any human being, he will give it his very, very best. And the best may not be enough to save his regime, but casualties will be involved.
Now, casualties is what we are seeing all over the place. Chika, I don't know, what do you make of the level of damage in Libya, in Tripoli as we speak? There's just one functioning hospital.
Well, not only do you have one functioning hospital, you don't even have the personnel there. See, that's one thing. So defining it to be a functioning hospital just because, you have patients in those hospitals, or the hospital does not really portend, so to say, okay for Libya and the rest of the world. Unfortunately, we've lost so much. The Libyan people, is not just like, if you begin to look at it as only Tripoli, what happened in Benghazi, what happened in Misrata. This is just like human and material resources actually lost. But unfortunately, we've allowed, just like Dr. Eke said, we really have to be very, very cautious.
And people in Libya are even confused. I mean, for example, with Gaddafi's sons showing up now,
exactly.
When he was said to have been under house arrest, has put a bit of a question mark on the credibility of the claims of the rebels, who say that they have up to 80% of Libya under their control. Can we still believe them, or do we start taking what the rebels say with a pinch of salt?
No, not a pinch of salt. First of all, let's go back to historical antecedent. There's tribal rivalry. If you know, the military general was assassinated, and that put confusion within the Transitional Council. The chairman of the council, Mustafa, alluded to it yesterday, that for them to take effective control, there's need for them to work united. It is in that dichotomy, it is in that lack of unity that you might begin to see why there's a crack on the wall. And that crack has inevitably led to some form of a situation where perhaps some rival elements within the rebel group might have made it possible for the escape of Mohammed Gaddafi and then the son coming out, which means that the people you thought arrested them might have been the group that may not necessarily be working with the rebels.
But okay, are you surprised when you think about the defection from Gaddafi loyalists to the rebel force? I mean, from the beginning of the revolution, we have had military men from Gaddafi's army, top government official defecting from Gaddafi's regime and saying they are now, loyal to the rebels. Are you surprised that some of this can come out? I think if we're looking at it critically, there should have been a little bit more cautious that even if these people are defecting, there might be those who are not actually defecting but are there as infiltrators.
Absolutely. So that, I think what you alluded to your question is, was there in place a methodology where you could subject these people to some form of scrutiny in order to test their loyalty? There was not. Yet you don't have to blame them. You see, things are unfolding so fast. You must give credit to these rebels. These are young students, workers, untrained, comparative to Gaddafi's well-trained over the years. This is a guy who came into power since 1969 and has played the tribal game over the years. Two, you must also understand that over the years, the man has also accumulated huge weaponry, of course, with the support of the West over the years. So you don't expect not to see a manifestation of those accumulation over the years. It will be, as I said, what needs to be done right now is for the Transitional National Council working in tandem with NATO to make sure that in this final onslaught that cognizance is taken of the possibility of what we are discussing today. Because, I mean, it defies military convention for a high-profile prisoner to have been held captive and within 24 hours, the story is unfolding. It doesn't make sense, except to say, first, it could also be a ploy on the part of NATO. You see, these are experienced military guys. I want to believe that there's something that we may not know, and the element of surprise may be at work right here. Okay. Are they putting this as a condition? Perhaps negotiations are not taking place right now. Say, okay, we may give you this option. We may not do this for you, but for us to do this, come out and do this, because the real person they are looking at is Gaddafi. At this time, you do not know if the sons themselves have been turned against the dad. Okay. So I'm being very, very careful.
Is that a possibility, seeing that they were really with their father in the regime, and even the Al-Islam person is actually going to face the International Criminal Court for war crimes?
Of course. See, part of military game plan and international politics, I'm sure Chika will agree with me, is you negotiate. The regime will not collapse until Gaddafi is either assassinated or captured. He is the symbol of the administration. The man was there for over 42, almost 42 years. He has weathered a lot of influence. And there may even be fear on the part of the children. So the children could be used as an instrumentality through which they can get to the dad. And to do so, they probably have them do it. Because, I mean, I want to believe that if the rebels would capture the three sons, maximum caution, maximum action must be taken to make sure that they do not escape. That this is unfold, it can either be A, that there's a portion of the rebel forces that are playing this tribal game that Gaddafi is playing, or alternatively, this is a game plan by the NATO in liaison with the rebel forces in order to get to Gaddafi. Because not until Gaddafi is captured, this fight is not over.
Okay, Chika, it's interesting we're talking about this because the issue of cracks. Now, Doc did a historical antecedent, and it's obvious that the rebels themselves aren't exactly a cohesive, united front. The only thing that's uniting them right now is that they want Gaddafi out. Now, people have said that the issue of cracks is something that, is a worry for the post-Gaddafi era, whenever that takes off. But if cracks start to become an issue while Gaddafi is still there, that probably means that we're in for a long, torturous battle. Or how do you see it?
No, but let's not, just like what Doctor said, but if you also look at what is happening in Libya, the National Front for the Salvation of Libya, based in Misrata, if you remember, they don't seem to recognize the National Transitional Council. That's one thing you have to understand. Much as these rebels were already put together, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So more or less, the common enemy there was, or is, Muammar Gaddafi. fighting.
Nothing as far as Tripoli. Don't you see that as a major success step for the rebel forces?
The back and forth is to be expected in a war of this nature. That's number one. Number two, I do not think that you would take some of the pronouncements of the rebel force with a pinch of salt, because when you allude to that, you give the impression there was an attempt to misrepresent the fact. They are giving information as it becomes available, albeit is subject to change. That's what you expect in a warfare of this nature. But going back to what could be a post-Gaddafi era, the National Transition Council, headed by Mustafa, must begin now to look at the adverse situation occasioned by the rivalry that Gaddafi has played over the years. The council was already put together with 33 members of different views, different loyalties, some of them even members of the Gaddafi over the years. What took many years? See, when you look at human interface, relationship is built over the years. What is important that they must all be united in the fact, they must all be united in the fact that Gaddafi must go. And what I think should be, what we must be interested here in this country, because you know, in international politics, you must see how it relates to Nigeria. Nigeria must begin to look at a support for a democratic post-Gaddafi era and how they could support that. How Nigeria could access a foreign policy that recognizes that in the 21st century, international politics, foreign policy must be dictated by core national and economic interest. How do we access what happens after Gaddafi? That Gaddafi must go is just a matter of time. But to the extent that the casualty that will be incurred is what we're trying to minimize. The journey from Benghazi to Tripoli tells us that he will go. I mean, make no mistake about it. But what is unfolding right now tells you right now that what people have been saying about the rivalry nature of the composition is still out there, and it will continue. So once they are united, as Chika said, listen, that he must go is the destination. Then let's now come back and get to the table and negotiate among ourselves. The politics is all about interest. Let's have those interests ironed out so that the interest does not constitute a problem to the overall objective. The overall objective is that he must go.
Yeah,
there's no argument about it.
All right, Chika, I just want to bring you in on this. There are forces that are outside of Libya that are interested in what's happening. How do you see this going on? The role of the international bodies in the post
let's look at the African Union. If you are listening to, you know, one of the reports was we had the South African aircraft, you know, at the tarmac there at the Tripoli airport. And if you are listening to what Mete Nkwana Mashabeni, that's the South African foreign minister, that African problems should be solved by Africa. The African Union have taken a stand that, look, the idea of actually bringing in external forces to solve problems relating to African countries should be over. That let African countries. But again, on the issue of Libya, at this point in time, most of the African countries might not. The African Union, as a matter of fact, because quite a number of them actually depend on Muammar Gaddafi for their survival. Interest.
I'm going to ask you to be a clairvoyant in 30 seconds. How do you see this ending up, and how soon?
I see it ending up that eventually the National Transitional Council will be moving to Tripoli. It's a matter of time. I also see that the United Nations will have to help them through this transitional program. But as you were just saying about the economic interest, you will see again a lot of international interest coming into Libya, because it's all about investment. The dismantling of Gaddafi was necessitated by a lot of foreign forces, and the real reason they did that was interest. So as the 17th largest oil producer of crude oil, they'll be coming there for it, they'll be struggle for it, and African countries must find a way to access this opportunity. Right.